Hello every pony, I'm Fauna Joy, and today I have an episode I hope you will enjoy. We meet a new character that the fandom found quite intriguing, though her appearances on the show were often rather fleeting. For now is the time we meet the mysterious Zecora, a zebra who mixes magic potions using interesting flora. The citizens of Ponyville found her frighteningly strange, but by the end of this episode their feelings are changed. So join me on this Bridle Gossip review and enjoy as I share my point of view. You know, after writing that intro, I wonder how long the show writers spent actually writing Zecora's lines. Rhyming is hard, y'all. Maybe that's the secret reason why they didn't include her as often as we would have liked. But, as with many characters, the lack of canon didn't stop the fandom from creating rich headcanons and fan worlds around her and zebra kind. I've already touched on all of that in dedicated theory videos though, so instead of trotting old grounds, I'll just recommend y'all go watch those. For today though, we're taking a look at the start of it all, Bridle Gossip. The episode opens on Twilight and Spike heading into the center of town while admiring the beautiful weather. Twilight says she's sure every pony will be outside enjoying the lovely day, and yet when they get there...
What? Where is every pony?
Rollin', 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 rollin'.
They continue through the street, baffled as to why they're the only ones outside. Their thoughts include a holiday of some kind, Spike's bad breath, and, of course, zombies. Because what else? Twilight discards these theories, and suddenly a frantic yet whisper-yelling Pinkie Pie tells them to hurry into Sugar Cube Corner with her. It's pitch dark inside, and with the help of a flashlight, we find the rest of the main six and Apple Bloom are also in there. Twilight asks why, and Applejack explains that they're hiding from her. Twilight is less than impressed as the scene fades to the theme song. After the theme, Apple Bloom asks if Twilight saw Zecora. Though I have to wonder how they learned her name if no pony ever talked to her. My best guess would be that the first time she came to town, Zecora tried to introduce herself. After all, this had to have started somewhere. Though Zecora doesn't really feel like the kind to just walk up to some pony and introduce herself. It's a small detail, but one of those that still kind of bugs me.
It's been bugging me for years.
Either way, Applejack chastises Apple Bloom for saying Zecora's name. Why? They never say. But given how frightened the ponies are of Zecora, I'd imagine amongst the rest of the mythology they've invented around her, the old say its name and summon it superstition probably popped up there too. Twilight is still thoroughly unimpressed.
Well, I saw her glance this way.
Glance evilly this way.
And then a bunch of you flip out for no good reason.
This episode is also the first time we really get to meet Apple Bloom, and I'm really happy that her character started and remained strong and righteously stubborn throughout the show. She's already sick of being treated like a baby, especially since Applejack is projecting her fear onto her. We also get to see her fiercely independent streak later, another aspect of her character that remained consistent through the show. The girls keep trying to explain why they're afraid of Zecora, but Twilight is still not buying it. She looks out the window again to see what Zecora's doing now.
Will you cut that out?
Rarity, of course, comments on Zecora's stripes and faints in horror when Twilight tells her Zecora was born with them. The others haven't heard of zebras before, so Twilight explains that they're from a faraway land, though she only knows of them from books. She asks why she's never seen Zecora before, and this is where we start to get lore about why the Everfree Forest is so scary. It's basically because everything in the forest happens without the help of ponies. They're used to a world where they have to care for just about everything. So it does make sense that the opposite of that would be downright terrifying to them. Rarity faints again, and Pinkie Pie sings a little song about how evil Zecora is.
Here we go. She's an evil enchantress. She does evil dances. And if you look deep in her eyes, she'll put you in trances. Then what will she do? She'll mix up an evil brew. Then she'll gobble you up in a big tasty stew. So, watch out!
Wow, catchy.
Yeah, not your best, Pinkie. Twilight asks them, more or less, for proof that Zecora is evil, and the level of snark Twilight brings to this exchange is golden. I feel like we didn't see this side of her as much as we could have as the show went on. There were a couple of glimpses of it here and there, but I think it mostly faded after she became a princess and she felt she had to start emulating Celestia more. But for now, let's enjoy the snark.
Once a month, she comes into Ponyville. Ooh. Then she lurks by the stores.
Oh my.
And then she digs at the ground.
Good gracious.
Twilight starts trying to bring logic into the conversation, suggesting that maybe Zecora wants to do the same thing every pony else does when they come to town, like shopping. Applebloom speaks up, agreeing with Twilight, but Applejack shuts her down, saying, "Let the big ponies talk." Applebloom sulks in the corner, and when Twilight says, "And if any pony here were actually brave enough to approach her, she would find out the truth," Applebloom decides that she is that brave pony. She heads outside and follows Zecora into the forest while the main six continue to argue inside.
You ponies are being ridiculous. Well, I heard that Zecora eats hay.
Pinkie, I eat hay. You eat hay.
Yeah, but I heard it's the evil way she eats hay.
Applejack notices Applebloom is gone. Fluttershy notices the door is open and they run out to find her, fearful that Zecora might hurt her. Applebloom is following Zecora closely, still too afraid to actually speak up, but Applejack calling her name gets both of their attention. This is when we hear Zecora speak for the first time.
Beware! Beware, you pony folk! Those leaves of blue are not a joke!
Not really all that helpful, Zecora. And also kind of incorrect when you think about it. After all, joke is literally in the plant's name. Well, the main six are standing right in the middle of the field of flowers, while Zecora and Applebloom aren't. Applejack scoops Applebloom up onto her back, and the girls start yelling after Zecora, mostly telling her to keep to herself. Twilight is annoyed with the others, but Applebloom is outright angry at them. Until Applejack starts chastising her, that is. Applejack, Pinkie Pie, and Rainbow Dash start going on about curses, but Twilight tries to explain that curses aren't real.
My magic, real magic, comes from within. It's a skill you're born with. Curses are artificial, fake magic. It's conjured with potions and incantations, while smoke and mirrors meant to scare. But curses have no real power. They're just an old ponytail.
And I can kind of understand what she's trying to say, though it's phrased a bit poorly. I think what she's trying to say is that the magic she, and by extension other unicorns, have is inherently different from curses, as curses by their very nature are harmful, and any quote-unquote curses that ponies know of have always proven to be, as she said, an old ponytail. Though I feel she's arguing from a bit of a fallacious angle here. Spells that are called curses, hexes, jinxes, or what have you are as varied as any other type of spell. Personally, I would call some of the spells Trixie used in Ghostbusters minor curses. She used her magic to cause harm to the ponies who challenged her, though the harm was mostly to their senses of pride. I get the feeling the show writers eventually decided to quietly push this view of Twilight aside, as there is a lot of magic later in the show that I think would definitely count as a curse. King Sombra, any pony? Especially since the only other time I can think of where Twilight gave a speech like this is in Feeling Pinky Keen when she says much the same about the Pinky sense. But I'll talk about that when I get there. Getting back to the scene itself, I love how when you watch it again with knowledge of what's going to happen, you notice just how long the girls linger in the field of flowers, with Rainbow Dash even flying low enough to deliberately clip them with her hooves and wings. The animators subtly emphasize that the flowers are important to what's going on, and brilliantly too. But there is one thing I have to question. Where did Apple Bloom go? She can't have hopped down off of Applejack's back or she would have gotten into the flowers too. It's possible one of the other girls took her with them, but why would they do that? Especially with how protective Applejack is of her. Maybe she used the same magic the lantern from the sleepover did. The girls brush off Twilight's commentary, and we cut to that night where Twilight's having a nightmare about Zecora, scored by Pinky's evil enchantress song. The next morning, Twilight wakes up with a convenient case of bedhead that covers her horn. She's chuckling, brushing off the idea of curses as well as her mane, but her attitude takes a quick turn.
Or she cursed my horn!
I would love the chance to meet at least one of the animators who worked on this episode and ask how much fun they had animating it. Or if it was a pain in the neck to come up with how these particular character models would move. I once tried to make a 3D model of Rarity's look, and that did not turn out well. Animation is hard, y'all.
An understatement to say the least.
Twilight searches frantically through her library for any explanation for what's happening. Nearly every book in the library is strewn about the room, but she can't find a single thing that might explain it. Spike suggests a book he found, but Twilight dismisses it.
How about this one?
Supernaturals? Spike, the word supernatural refers to things like ghosts and spirits and zombies, which are as make-believe as curses. This book is just a bunch of hooey.
I feel like if I was in Twilight's place, I'd be willing to look at just about any book for an answer, especially if literally nothing else in the library is helping. After all, we know in our world that fiction can inspire fact, or is even inspired by fact in some cases. All that's needed is an understanding of the underlying principles, which I think Twilight could figure out pretty quickly. Pinkie Pie shows up and is barely understandable because her tongue has swelled so large that it is spilling out of her mouth, covering any poor bystander near her in saliva when she tries to speak. Next to show up is Rainbow Dash, who is crashing into everything as she flies. I will admit, it took me years to realize what the flowers actually did to Rainbow. It's hard to tell, mostly because she never sits still or there's something blocking the camera, but her wings are upside down on her stomach. Though I am curious if she's unable to just, walk.
Ooh, I've never had to walk before. This is fun. Now I'm bored. Walking is dumb.
Well, next to show up is Rarity, and she more closely resembles a ponified cousin It than the most fashionable pony in Ponyville. Applejack and Apple Bloom show up next, and Applejack is now roughly the size of Apple Bloom's ear with a tiny squeaky voice to match. Oh, and Fluttershy is here too, but nothing looks different about her.
Is there something wrong with you? Would you care to tell us? So, you're not gonna tell us? Yes, you're not, or yes, you will?
Good gravy, girl. What's wrong with you?
I don't want to talk about it.
I can't blame her for keeping quiet. Though I think she got the only one that could potentially be lived with had they never found a cure. After all, this early on she barely speaks anyway, so it'd probably take a while for any pony to notice. Not that that's a good thing. Spike starts laughing himself silly, giving nicknames to the girls based on their particular affliction.
We got Harity, Rainbow Crush, Spitty Pie, Apple Teeny, Flutter Guy, and... I got nothing. Twilight Sparkle. I mean, seriously, I can't even work with that.
Twilight Sparkle with a wobbly horn. Well, I don't want to just copy what Spike comes up with at the end of the scene. Um, yeah, I got nothing either. The girls aren't seeing the humor in the situation and start arguing about what to do. Twilight is still arguing the point of whether or not it's a curse or a hex. Applejack and Rainbow Dash are arguing for going to Zecora for a cure. Not sure what the other three are saying as they don't speak up until the group argument gets going. Plus, Spitty Pie. Apple Bloom is blaming herself for all of this since it wouldn't have happened if she hadn't gone after Zecora. So she does the mature thing. She speaks up and tells the adults she's sorry and yeah, no, she goes off on her own again. Applejack sees her walking out this time and leaps into her tail to tail her. Well, I found it funny. Caught up in the argument, the girls don't notice either of the Apple sisters leaving and start to panic that one of them might have stepped on, sat on, or otherwise squished Applejack. Or maybe she got lost in Rarity's hair. Nope, she's gone. And so is Apple Bloom. Well, that seals it. They need to go after them into the Everfree. Again. For some reason, Applejack waits until Apple Bloom's at the edge of the forest to speak up and tell her to stop. Maybe it took that long for her to climb from Apple Bloom's tail up into her mane? Applejack tells her to turn back, but Apple Bloom has other ideas.
Sorry, Applejack, but I'm the big sister now. Apple Bloom, you come back here right this instant. I'm gonna tell Big Macintosh on you! Oh, pony feathers.
The rest of the group aren't far behind, but Rarity and Rainbow are having trouble keeping up. But Rainbow does find Applejack. Technically. Ew. Applejack rustles up a bit and reins for Rainbow suspiciously quickly and hops on, not really steering her any better than Rainbow was steering herself. The other four girls arrive at Zecora's hut. I'm gonna assume they found it because it's the only direct, well-worn path in the forest. It's a cozy-looking tree home decorated with hanging bottles and tribal masks. The girls find it frightening, which I can kind of understand, even from Twilight at this point. She's gotten caught up in the other girls' panic, so any of her previous logic and reason has gone right out the window. Unlike Rainbow Dash.
Rim shot!
They watch as Zecora pours something into a bubbling cauldron and says something that, unfortunately, is only random sounds that sound vaguely like Swahili. This comes from Lauren Faust herself. She does say she was disappointed by this, so I would assume that means she herself wanted the zebra language to actually be a real African language, but she says she copes by saying she's imagining that it's not Swahili, it's zebra. Pinky splutters that Zecora stole her song, even though they sound nothing alike. She gives Fluttershy big anime eyes, begging her to sing the song. The look on Fluttershy's face as she sings it is wonderful. She is just so done with Pinky's shenanigans. And while she does sing it much slower than Pinky did earlier, I still don't hear it. The girls needle at Twilight, asking if she finally believes them. Twilight tries one more time to explain it rationally.
Or what if Zecora's just making soup?
The perfect temperature for ponies, I presume. Now, where is that little Apple Bloom?
Or what if she's making apple bloom soup?
Okay, out of context, I can see how that could be a suspicious statement. But I feel like they only make that assumption because they've already worked themselves into a tizzy. If they were calmer, I think they would have been worried, but not jumping right to the conclusion of Apple Bloom soup. It's around this time that Applejack and Rainbow Dash finally catch up, crashing through the door and absolutely destroying everything in Zecora's hut. Twilight slams the door open again, which I'm just gonna assume was closed by Rainbow Dash crashing around the room, and demands to know what Zecora did with Apple Bloom. Rainbow is still crashing around, ultimately knocking over the cauldron. Zecora is furious as the girls confront her, highly offended that after destroying her home, they accuse her of being a jerk. Twilight and Zecora are moments from throwing hooves when Apple Bloom just casually walks into the room.
I think I found all the things you asked for. What in Ponyville is going on here?
Zecora and Apple Bloom are finally able to explain what's going on. The leaves of blue are a plant called poison joke, which instead of giving a nasty rash like poison oak, afflicts the pony with a joke. We only see poison joke one other time in the show, but it does show up a couple other times in the official books and comics. Plus, the fandom took the idea of this plant and just ran with it. I think my favorite use of it that I've seen is actually from one of the official chapter books, Ponyville Mysteries: The Journey to Livewood. In this one, a filly known for being particularly serious and withdrawn is lured into the flowers to break a mind control spell. And not only does she start acting goofy to the point of rivaling Pinky, her hooves turn into springs, so she is literally bouncing off the walls. The creativity in the MLP community will never cease to amaze me. Back in the episode, it takes 3 explanations of what happened for the girls to understand that the plants were the cause of everything, and Zecora was just trying to warn them to stay away from them.
If you will remember back, the words I spoke were quite exact. Beware, beware, you pony folk. Those leaves of blue are not a joke.
It was a warning about that blue plant. It's called poison joke.
That plant is much like poison oak, but its results are like a joke.
What in the hay does that mean?
It means this plant does not breed wrath. Instead, this plant just wants a laugh.
Will some pony please talk normal?
I think what she's saying is that when we ran in to save Apple Bloom, we ran into the poison joke. All our problems are just little jokes that played on us.
Little jokes? Very funny.
When the others demand to know what Zecora was doing and ask about the decor, it turns out Zecora was mixing up the cure for the poison joke and was more or less chanting a nursery rhyme while she waited for it to simmer. I get it. I think a lot of us will randomly start humming or singing something when we're bored and waiting for something to cook. As for the decor, they're all from her native land and are actually meant to welcome visitors to her home. Apple Bloom was gone when they arrived because she was picking up an ingredient for the cure that Zecora was out of. Apple Bloom points to a book off to the side, which Zecora closes, revealing another copy of Supernaturals. I don't really blame Spike for not pushing Twilight to consider the book when he found it, though. I would assume he knows that when she's in that kind of mental state, there's really no getting through to her, which is kind of her theme for this whole episode. Twilight apologizes for misjudging Zecora, and Zecora says the thing.
Maybe next time you will take a second look and not judge the cover of the book.
Twilight politely asks that Zecora mix up another batch of the cure, and Zecora says the only problem is that she's missing herbs from Ponyville. Apple Bloom chimes in that it's because anytime she tries to get more, all of the shops are mysteriously closed. She somehow manages to say this with a completely straight face. If it were me, I'd definitely let a little bit of "I told you so" creep in. Twilight says they can help with that, and we cut to the group walking into Ponyville, causing panic amongst the Ponyvillians. Twilight knocks on Daisy's door, and we fade to the girls in a nice big spa as Twilight's voiceover reads the letter.
Dear Princess Celestia, my friends and I all learned an important lesson this week. Never judge a book by its cover. Someone may look unusual or funny or scary, but you have to look past that and learn who they are inside. Real friends don't care what your cover is. It's the contents of a pony that count. And a good friend, like a good book, is something that will last forever. Your faithful student, Twilight Sparkle.
One of the spa ponies comes over to Zecora, asking her for the recipe for the bath as it is simply luxurious. There's a moment of panic as the girls realize they don't know for sure where Applejack is, somehow forgetting that they put her in her own tiny bath off to the side, in a cider mug, looks like. Pinky pops out of the water doing one of her signature rambles about how happy she is to be able to talk again, and the episode ends on a group laugh.
Always wanted to do one of these laughs with you guys. How long does it last?
The worse the joke, the longer the laugh.
I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, though I feel like the don't judge a book by its cover idiom itself is kind of outdated. The sentiment is still definitely needed, sadly, but these days the cover of a book is actually a pretty good way to judge if it might be good or not, especially nowadays with AI slop being used everywhere. Personally, I feel like this episode was a bit of a turning point for the characters. They learned to be more accepting of outsiders and to get to know them before judging them. I plan to go more into that idea in a finalizing episode, so I'm not going to say much more than that. As I said at the start, Zecora got very few appearances through the rest of the show in spite of how much the fandom loved her. She was unfortunately the victim of a string of planned characters that were ultimately put to the side. Namely, Zecora was originally planned to be a sage and mentor to the ponies of Ponyville, as well as a second mentor to Twilight in Celestia's absence. While some of that did get trickled into the series, sadly Zecora was largely forgotten through the majority of the show. A little bit of the sage idea did come through in her mentoring of Apple Bloom, but that again barely got any screen time and was only mentioned a couple of times in the later seasons. As for zebras as a whole, I kind of like that Zecora was an outlier as opposed to an example of how the entirety of her species behaves and speaks. I feel like if she was just like every other zebra, then she wouldn't have been the only one ever to journey to Equestria. And while I stand by my statement in my Zebras Revisited episode that I prefer the fandom version of zebra magic, I still like the idea of Zecora traveling to Equestria to learn equestrian magic. Even if she already had her own type of magic, it's clear even from what little we're shown of her that she values knowledge of all things. Sadly, now we have reached the end of this video. I am always sad to see you go, but I hope you will join me next time, which I'm looking forward to because I won't have to rhyme. So I'm Fauna Joy saying goodbye, and now into the sky I fly. Hello, every pony. I can't even say my own name. So join me on this Bridle Gossip review good grief. You're not helping, mister. Given how frightened the ponies are of Zecora, I'd imagine that amongst the rest of the mythology they've invented around her, the old say its name and summon it, Applejack scoops Apple Bloom up onto her back, and the girls start yelling after Zecora, mostly telling her to keep her. Applejack scoops Apple Bloom up onto her back, and the girls start yelling after Zecora, mostly telling them telling her. They're not telling them, they're telling her. Twilight's annoyed with them, but Apple Bloom is outright angry with them. Until Applejack starts good grief. Though I feel she's arguing from a bit of a fallacious angle here. Spells that are called hearses. That's an entirely different thing. Going back to this scene itself, I love how watching it back with knowledge of what's going to happen. I need to rewrite that. Twilight is still arguing the point of whether or not it's a curse or a hex. Apple Black, that's an entirely different character. For some reason, Applejack waits until Apple Bloom's at the edge of the forest to speak up and tell her to stop. Maybe it just took that long for her to climb up to Apple Blue, good grief, I can't say their names right. Apple Bloom was gone when they arrived because she was picking up an ingredient for the core that Zecora was... Zecora? I am just doing wonderfully with the names this time around. One of the spa ponies comes over to Zecora, asking her for the recipe for the bath. There's a moment of panic as the girls realize they don't know for sure where. Good grief, I'm almost done. There's a moment of panic as the girls realize they don't know. Why do I keep stumbling over those? I plan to go more into that in a finalizing episode, so that's not the line. As for wow, what did my voice do there? As for zebras as a whole, I kind of like that Zecora was an outlier as exposed. She wasn't. She kind of exposed. Yeah. As for zebras as a whole, I kind of like that Zecora was an outlier as is. Why do I keep trying to say words that aren't in the script? And while I stand by my statement and my at least I got farther that time. And while I stand by my statement in my Zebras Revisited episode that I prefer the fandoms or... My mouth just wants to combine all the words into one.